In this video, we're going to cover how to create an outline. So what exactly is an outline? An outline can be used many different ways for work writing or academic writing, but in the context of academic writing, you're usually given an assignment such as an essay, and because of the length of the assignment, doing an outline is helpful because it's a pre-writing activity that helps you figure out the organization of your content before you start writing the first draft. And it essentially plots out the main points, the topic sentences in some cases that you want to use in your essay, and the key details that will be covered in each of the paragraphs. And what you can see here on the right is a generic outline showing you how you can number using Roman numerals and capital letters for the first subdivision is the most common setup, and then usually there's either a title or a topic and a working thesis statement. Why should we outline? Well, there's many benefits. It seems to some people like it might be a waste of time, but it's actually not. It saves you time in the writing process. And it's the natural next step after you've brainstormed ideas. So when you've done a free write or a listing activity, or you've talked out ideas with somebody, this helps you take that information that you know you want to cover and organize it so that when you sit down to write your essay, you know where to start, what to do second, third, fourth, etc. And it helps you avoid writer's block, so there's no sitting down in front of a blank Word document on a screen and staring at it and saying, oh, I don't know what I'm going to write about, I have no idea. It outlines what you're going to do so that you can get started right away. And it provides you that roadmap before you start writing so that you have confidence that you know what you're going to do next and after that and so on, so that you don't have to worry, am I going to get lost? Am I going to get off track? And it gives you the ability to plan what you're going to do ahead of time and get feedback on that before you start writing a rough draft, which can be useful particularly if you have time to get feedback from a peer or a tutor or an instructor to say, hey, here's what I plan to do before I sit down and write it out fully as a draft. Is this a good idea? Am I hitting the right spots? Am I including all the important information for my topic sentences and my supporting details? And then it reduces the amount of revision needed in the rewriting or revision stage, hopefully, theoretically, because you're doing a lot of the organizing of information beforehand. You won't have to do as much cutting and reorganizing and potentially adding that you would have to do if you didn't outline first. So there are two main types of outlines that we generally talk about for essays. The first one here is the formal, also called sentence outline. And that one, as it sounds, is more formal and it uses full sentences when it is organizing content. So again, you'll have your topic and your working thesis statement, which again, the working thesis statement should be one full sentence. You'll have main points, which will be your draft topic sentences, and you'll have key details, which will be your supporting detail sentences, and it uses full sentences for all of those. It also has strict formatting that you're using capital Roman numerals to indicate paragraph level topic sentences, and then the first subdivision of key details is capital letters. For comparison, the scratch, rough, or topic outline is very informal, does not use full sentences, has the same topic and working thesis statement that should be one full sentence, but otherwise you're using words or phrases to indicate the main points and the key details. And it has more flexible formatting in that people don't generally care what type of numbering system you use. You could even use a bullet point list such as this, just so that it clearly indicates what's a main point and what's a key detail. So what's in an outline? Well, you should have your topic identified. So that is, 2 to 3 words, usually the overall focus of the assignment. It may also become part of the title in the future. And it needs to indicate what you're going to be writing about. And usually will also indicate if it is a argument essay, if it is an informative essay, if it is a narrative essay or something like that. The working thesis statement, we call it working because we know it is going to change. That is one sentence providing an overview of your entire assignment. And since you haven't written that yet, obviously this is going to change as you work on your rough draft and final drafts down the road, but you have to start somewhere. And this is the one sentence that guides everything in your essay. So everything in your essay has to support and develop this sentence. And it will have two things. It'll indicate, again, the topic and have the perspective or high-level takeaways that you're going to be covering in your essay. The main points will be the focus for each body paragraph, and in the case of the formal outline, it will be your actual topic sentence for each body paragraph. And if you are given an assignment where you have a certain number of body paragraphs you have to have, then you'll know how many of those you'll need. So for example, we generally say an essay has to have at least 5 paragraphs, an introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and a conclusion, which means that you would need at least 3 main points or 3 topic sentences. However, that's usually just a starting point. You really need however many you need to cover the content that you want to cover in your essay. So it can certainly be more than that. The key details, this depends on how detailed you want to get or how detailed you're asked to get if this is an assignment that you're given. But usually you do at least one breakdown where you indicate what you're going to talk about under each topic sentence. You can further break those down almost infinitely, but at some point it gets a little bit too much. But expect to do at least one breakdown into identifying the key details you're going to use to support and develop your main points. What's not typically included in an outline? Generally a title, unless you have been assigned a title or you already know what your title is going to be. The introduction paragraph material, except for the thesis statement. So generally you don't say how you're going to hook your reader and narrow down the focus of your topic and then end with your thesis statement. Normally you just include your thesis statement. Normally conclusion material is not included. At this point in time, it's not terribly helpful because you might make edits to your content, in which case then your conclusion material would change for the rough draft. So usually we leave that out. There shouldn't be any questions really at this point because we generally don't use questions in essays. We provide answers and information. So at this point, all of your questions that you might have used to develop your topic or to research your topic should be turned into statements. And transitional phrases and sentences are optional. Generally, people don't include those until it's time to beef up and expand their outline into a rough draft. And the same with concluding sentences. Again, usually that comes in for the rough draft, not as part of the outline. So where do you start? Well, before you can start organizing your content, you need some content, right? So make sure that you review the assignment framework that you're given. Make sure that you understand what you need to do for that assignment so that you pick the right type of essay. You pick a topic that fits the framework of the assignment. If you don't do that, oftentimes you'll need to start over entirely. So make sure right from the get-go you're correctly interpreting the assignment and choosing an appropriate topic and choosing an appropriate frame for that topic. Once you have your topic picked out, then do some brainstorming pre-writing activities such as free writing, listing or free association, talking it out with somebody, or the mapping, webbing, branching, or clustering that helps you connect ideas. And once you have that content started, then you want to create an outline. So based on that information coming from those pre-writing activities, you then organize it with the outline. So I have an example free write here, and this is a fairly popular pre-writing activity because sometimes you don't know what you think about a topic until you think about it and write it down. So the free write is pretty quick and easy to come up with information. The assignment frame for this is if you were writing an example or illustration essay and you needed to come up with examples to share with your reader about your topic. So in this case, I have decided I'm going to write an example or illustration essay on how my job, my dream job, changed over time. So from when I was a small child until I was an adult, what my dream job was at the time, and it changed significantly, and I remember at every step what it was, so it was very easy for me to think of the various things that I would cover at the main point level of the outline. However, I didn't know what I was going to write so much about the key supporting details, so I wanted to do a free write. So I sat down for about 10 minutes and I wrote a free write where I just wrote as much as I could, as quickly as I could, about the topic. It's messy, there can be typos, there can be starts and stops, it doesn't matter. This is just to get some ideas about what you want to talk about. I then went back and I looked for those jobs. One job per paragraph is going to be the focus for my example essay. So you can see here I have 4 jobs that I wanted to do from childhood to post-college. So veterinarian, astrophysicist, psychologist, and teacher. And I highlighted them all yellow. And those are my 4 main points that I'm going to cover in the essay. Then I highlighted in this aqua blue the details that I had come up with in this free write that I thought would be interesting to include as key supporting details when I'm talking about each different job. So for veterinarian, I want to talk about how I loved handling animals and working with animals, but I decided I didn't like potentially causing them pain or ultimately euthanizing animals, so that wasn't the job for me. I wanted to be an astrophysicist because I loved outer space, but I really struggled with pre-calculus, so it turned out that that wasn't the job for me because it had so much math in it. I was interested in being a psychologist of some sort because psychology was a really popular major in college, and I was interested in some of the theories and research that they did, but I didn't like the 8 a.m. psychology lecture, and so ultimately decided, I don't like the time of the lecture, I don't necessarily want to be a therapist and work with people that way, so I changed to become an English major, which ultimately led to teaching and why I fell in love with it. So once I have this free write and my main points and some of the key details chosen, I'm ready to start creating an outline. And the top portion, the topic and the working thesis statement I have here, this would be the same if it were a formal outline or if it were a scratch or rough outline. So I have put it independently here, also because of spacing issues. So my topic is my dream jobs throughout my life. Working thesis statement needs to be 1 sentence. Remember, though some people carefully plan their career trajectory, I've had many dream jobs throughout my life, and I ended up in a completely unexpected career. Then I have the example scratch, rough, or topic outline here, which is using short phrases, not full sentences, and is not using a very formal structure. It just uses bullet points with indentation to indicate what's a main point versus what's a key detail. And so you can see here I've identified my main points with the bold main point number 1 and so on. You don't necessarily have to do that, but just to show for the example here, I included it. So my main point, I'm going to do this in chronological order because I guess that makes the most sense for me, that it builds to where I ended up. But I wanted to be a veterinarian first, then an astrophysicist, then a psychologist, finally a professor. And then the key details, as I was writing my free write and creating my outline, I came up with even more key details that I would want to include. So again, just the help of brainstorming, going through these pre-writing activities prepares me for writing my rough draft. So you can see here, childhood dream, veterinarian. I always had pets, loved almost any kind of animals. There were a few exclusions, but I realized I couldn't be a vet because I didn't want to euthanize animals, and that could be a large portion of the job. My teenage job, preteen, teen job, wanted to be an astrophysicist. It sounded cool. Most adults didn't know what it was. I loved astronomy. But I realized in high school that I was starting to become bad at math. Could I have turned that around? Absolutely, but I didn't have the time and energy at that point, so I gave up on my dream. Kind of sad. Then when I got to college, and you really have to buckle down and start working toward a career, I was influenced by a lot of people being interested in psychology, so I was kind of going with the crowd. And I enjoyed learning about the research studies and the theories, but I realized I didn't want to do one-on-one or group counseling, which is where most people end up. So I wrote that career off and said, nope, not going to be a psychologist. Finally, after I graduated with an English major, because that's what I loved doing at the time, reading and writing, I went to grad school because I didn't know what else to do, and it sounded like fun, and it was fun. I realized then that I kind of narrowed my jobs down even more by going to grad school, and the options were mostly being a teacher of some sort, or an editor, or a writer. And when I started school, I definitely thought I was going to be a writer or an editor. I was too shy to get up on stage and perform as a teacher or professor. And I started working in a library as I was going through school. But then I saw all the fun that other teaching assistants were having, and so I said, I really want to give that a try, join that crowd. You can see I like to join crowds. And it was amazing. I loved it, and I found out even though I was shy and fairly introverted, I could become more extroverted and enjoy teaching. For comparison, here's what it looks like as a formal or sentence outline. So all of the information is the same. All of the divisions are the same. However, I have turned them into full sentences. So where it says Roman numeral 1, it's a full sentence, and then A, B, C, these are my 3 subdivisions of key details that I'm going to cover, and those are also full sentences, and you can see you get a lot more detail. So, since a very young age, my childhood dream was to become a veterinarian so I could work with animals every day. From my earliest memories, I had pets, dogs, guinea pigs, hamsters, and fish. I loved learning about and interacting with animals of just about any kind, even snakes. And when I was 12, my dog needed to be put down due to cancer. And I realized that a large part of being a vet was euthanizing animals, which I didn't think I could handle, and so I decided that wasn't the job for me. Next paragraph. I've always loved astronomy, so I tried to impress everyone as a middle schooler by saying my dream job was being an astrophysicist. So subdivisions to the key supporting details. I had always loved staring at the stars and watching Star Trek Next Generation and Star Wars. The job title had so many syllables, I thought it sounded cool to tell people that it was my dream job. And most adults didn't even know what the job was, just that physics, as part of that title, was difficult, so they generally were impressed by the job title. And when I got to pre-calculus in 11th grade, I started to struggle with math a lot, very significantly, and so I figured a career in advanced mathematics just wouldn't work out and wasn't for me. So I gave up on that dream fairly quickly, but I still enjoy astronomy as a hobby. By college, I had already ruled out nursing as a career. That was another popular one at the time, but I felt like becoming a psychologist would be a good job because it was a very popular major. I enjoyed learning about psychology research studies and theories, such as the flaws in trying to measure IQ, intelligent quotients. But I didn't want to do counseling or direct patient care, which seemed to be what the majority of graduates ended up doing. So I gave up on that dream. And in college, I decided not going to major in psychology, decided to major in English because I loved reading and writing, which then led to a career in teaching. I went on to graduate school in creative writing because there are no direct jobs for English majors. You can't graduate in English the way nursing majors can graduate and become a nurse. The one thing I knew entering the program was that I did not want to be a teacher, particularly a K-12 teacher, but also a college instructor, because I was too shy to be on stage in the classroom. I saw the fun and fulfillment teaching assistants were having in my program, and I decided to become a TA in my second year, and I haven't looked back. And to look at the formal numbering for formal and sentence outlines here, it can show you how to break down even further depending on how much detail you want to include. But you see you have your first main point or topic sentence. The first division of that would be your first key detail, and that would be a capital A. And then if you wanted to break that down, you would use a lowercase Roman numeral, which would be an I. And then that would be a subdivision of that first key detail. And then if you wanted to break down that key detail into further subdivision, you would use lowercase a. So you can see how you go capital, Roman numeral, capital letter, lowercase Roman numeral, lowercase letter. And you can actually keep going down from there. It just depends on how long your document is, and the longer it is, the more likely you are to want to break things down. One thing I will note is that if you do break down into details and subdivision, you need to have at least 2 of each of these. So you can't just have A, you have to have A and B. You can't just have I, you need to have I and II. And again, you can't just have lowercase a, you need to have lowercase a, lowercase b. The reason being is that if you need to subdivide, you need at least 2 things to have a reason to subdivide. Otherwise, you don't really need to subdivide.